Paracelsus said, we only transmute without that which we have first transmuted within. Okay. We're going to do a little quick overview of some basic alchemy before we get in to working with some stuff in the lab. Have any of you made tinctures? You made them? Yeah? Okay. Have you distilled them, like you just make them, or have you just filtered them and used them? Okay. Have you done any work with the calcining the ash? Okay, yeah. Yeah, how'd that go for you?
Actually, fairly well. I mean, doing it as you described in your book.
Yeah.
You know, so, never quite getting it hot enough to hit the white.
Yeah.
But, you know, pretty late rate.
Yeah. And sometimes that's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
I mean, you really gotta the ash, by the way, the salt is really, they say the secret's in the salt. So the more time you spend getting that salt white,
well,
the better off.
We had done the 7, and it was an interesting process.
Okay.
It's interesting how different they run.
Yeah.
You know, that in and of itself was just fascinating, how it felt.
Patient.
Patience is key.
Yeah, well, that's what Jean Dubuis used to say, is over the laboratory, the entrance to the lab of every alchemist, you have to put the word patience.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a good opportunity to really embrace that.
Yeah. Well, we want to rush it, and you often hear what happens is when you're doing this stuff, when you push it near the end, especially when you say, oh, I'm doing it, that's when the opportunity to really ruin everything occurs, because you want to push it, you want to hurry it up, you want to get that last distillate over, and that's when you run the risk of burning everything. So you really have to be patient. The easiest tincture, of course, to make is simply that, I mean, the tincture. And what differs between it and, say, when you get off the shelf, is that you go to the store and you get, we'll say Nature's Way or whatever a brand is, and they take a nice fresh herb, most likely. They may use dry, but they probably fresh, and if not, they let it sit in some alcohol for a while, and probably not that long, and then they drain it off and they filter it and put it in a bottle and they give it to you. And this is nice. And in fact, you can make a tincture in about 2 hours. And if you have fresh herb, and we're going to show you some differences shortly, fresh herb with, on a hot plate, and you can hold that up, and those, like, I use lemon balm. That lemon balm will go from the green leaf to a yellow-green to almost a white. You'll get yellow-green in a few hours, so you can make a tincture very quickly if you need to, but it'll go white in a few, probably by the end of the day. So what we're doing is we don't need to let it sit for the 10 to 14 days. What we do, though, is we do it because traditionally that's how it was done. People put them on hot plates. Now they put them in cow dung, or they put them near a stove or some fireplace, someplace where it's warm to keep the circulation going. They go over and they look at it, they shake, and they put it back. Okay. But at the same time, we also let it sit for a while because the belief is that we're allowing the herb as it sits and evaporates, as the alcohol goes off and then comes back down, to attract more of the particular astral or planetary energy that the herb is aligned with. Because all of alchemy deals with the doctrine of correspondences. You know what that is?
Yes.
Okay. It all is based on that. That's also called the golden chain of Homer in some texts. And several people interpret the golden chain of Homer in different ways. One is not better than the other, they're just different, and you have to use the right interpretation for the word. Okay?
So that's the golden chain.
What?
Golden chain of what?
Homer.
Homer.
Yeah. Yes, most often when you see the golden chain of Homer in relation to the levels of density, I have a picture here you might look at. But it's not terribly, it's not going to be a great insight. It's just something a text that you often read.
So would you let it sit even for 42 days then?
Oh yeah, I let them sit. Yeah, I just put them away. I just don't do anything. If I have to do something in a rush, I know I can. But I don't. I just let it sit.
If you didn't rush, then you'd have to do a lot of prayer over it.
Well, rush would be like, actually I'd do less. I'd walk away. I would just let it do its thing, knowing this is okay, this is what we're doing. and just go through it. And a
Drink
rush.
this or die.
Pardon?
Drink this or die.
Oh yeah, or don't drink too much. Yeah, I mean, I had a lemon balm tincture, very nice, good stuff. And usually, people take a few drops, and people don't listen. These alchemists are crazy guys, mostly because it is men, and they're often crazy. And they, you tell them to take 10 drops. We always say 20, 20 to 40, more is better. And a friend of mine, he asked me, this is going back a while, he asked me to do a presentation in Philadelphia. And I did, and one of his coworkers was there, and I gave her a jar, actually, of lemon balm tincture. And I told her what to do with it. I said, just how to finish it off, basically. Finish distilling it. And so now if you take it, only take, 10 drops at a time. And I think she took like a shot glass of it. And I called him like half a year later, and she's over the hill, Normally that doesn't happen, but too much of a good thing, makes you nuts. So, when you follow the directions, you follow them carefully, because the tinctures are designed, particularly what we call an ends, and I have some in there for you, lemon balm ends. The tincture is designed to help purify your psychic channels. Now they don't do it permanently. A permanent purification of the channels requires a metallic tincture, usually antimony, a fixed or unfixed tincture of antimony. I have directions on my website on how to make that. I would suggest that you look at those. I am not quite confident in some of the readings I've seen published on how to make them. I know for a fact that one of the authors who asked me to write a brief blurb for his book many years ago, his first book I thought was good. I mean, it's good, so I wrote the blurb. And the second book came out later, and I know for a fact that the information in there is radically incomplete, because all of the information on the Flamel path, while a citation was given in the back as being translated by my friend Patrice Melizet, he did translate it, but I can tell you that those were notes from a seminar. They are not the complete instructions. And the instructions in the book by a fellow who claims to be the heir of Albertus claim to be complete, and they are not. It's therefore I doubt much of the other work in his book as well. Now the first book, again, I liked. The second book I find to be, well, personally, I would not use it. Am I clear?
Yes.
Good.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The tincture that is on your website that we could use, what was the name of it again?
There's fixed and unfixed tinctures of antimony.
Antimony.
We're not going to talk about them.
Okay.
But
I'll check it on the website.
Yes, I'm letting you know that that is the gateway to other mineral work. And that will provide a profound and powerful healing tincture. But it is dangerous. You have to get the antimony. Antimony is highly toxic. You have to purify it. And then you have to purify it with other things that are very toxic. And then you have to purify it again. So it's a very dangerous and difficult work. But you can do it. And Brian has enough lab equipment where, I don't know, we have to, he and I haven't talked much about it, but it's something that I know he has enough here where you can do it. So it doesn't require a lot of equipment. It just requires profound attention to detail. Often those tinctures are, you do not take the tincture directly, but you're taking an alcohol-based homeopathic dilution of it. I mean, when you get these things and you realize that this is an alcohol-based homeopathic dilution of this tincture, this stuff's, is strong. Yes?
Can you talk briefly about how many years, or kind of give some kind of a marker as to when it would be safe or appropriate for somebody to transition from doing plant alchemy tinctures to antimony?
It's a matter of your own level of skill with the equipment. I mean, how comfortable are you dealing with that kind of stuff? I mean, we say it's like the toxic energies are more powerful. Same thing like in Vajrayana. You deal with the toxic emotions because they're more powerful. You purify them first. Okay? Same thing with, the antimony stuff. You deal with the toxic stuff because it's strongest, but you have to be very confident. Because, people say, oh, it's natural, it can't hurt you. And I looked at the one girl in the health food store, said it to me, I said, and mercury's natural, it'll give you a one-way trip to the attic. Okay? So, that's why, I don't really deal with that too much, but I know that you can just set that up for you. People want to jump into mineral work, and there are things you can do. Fixed tinctures of antimony are one of them. It's very powerful, very strong, and it's fairly easy in the broader scheme of things to do. And then there's the other work, which would be working with the Flamel path. As in Nicholas Flamel, Harry Potter, okay? Real guy, real life, real Paris. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
F-L-A-M-M-E-L?
Sometimes 2 M's, sometimes 1. Sometimes F-L-A-M, sometimes F-L-A-M-M-E-L. Depends on the...
The astronomy. No, astronomy.
What about astronomy?
Did you write a lot about astronomy?
No, he wrote on alchemy.
Alright, wrong guy.
Yeah. Oh, Flammarion you're thinking of.
Miriam, sorry.
So, Flamel was in the 14th century? I think 14th century. So anyhow, you can look at that in the back of my book. But before you get to the back, you get to the front. The front deals with plant work. And people do plant work for 3, 5, 7 years before they do mineral work, or they just do it forever. Because plant work is inexhaustible. I'm telling you that right now. There is so much you can do with it. I have barely scratched the surface on that book. It is an inexhaustible domain. And there are people who will then specialize in sub-areas because there's so much cool stuff you can do with it. Okay? And that's really the point I want to say to you now. Making spagyric tinctures, it takes more patience than it does work. Okay? So you have to really stay with stuff. Work meaning there's hard effort. The effort is in the self. Sticking with this, calcining this, leaching the ashes, going back and forth, making sure you get the good herbs. But it's not the same as tending the fires. Okay? It's not the same. Or wondering if, Israel Regardian, he damaged his lungs. Okay. And he was very skilled. He was very talented in the work. But, it's not like that. I mean, it's much easier. And the good news is you can work with your friends and family. You can make strong healing tinctures. And will the effects be as strong as... No, it won't be. But you can bring a powerful, powerful healing quality to it. Trust me on this. Okay? I know Brian's doing some work, but I've got some tincture in there for you that you will see for yourself. This is very good, and if you just make 7 planetary tinctures, work with those, work with making the good salts, work with making stones. There are 2 kinds of stones. I've seen the small pebbles, which I call those the German school, because they're a hard little pebble. And then I've seen what I call like the French school, which is it's more like a paste, like the fruit roll-ups. I remember taking a sliver of that one night when I was staying with Hans Nitzel. Hans was a great guy. We owe a lot to him for making available the alchemical manuscripts in English that we have now. He went at great length and great expense and great personal effort to collect these manuscripts, have them translated, and then typeset. And they were later sold as RAMS, R-A-M-S, the RAMS series. People are selling them now for free. They're not selling them, but they're offering them for free, which is a great disservice. Or they're selling pirated editions. You can get them on CD. Some of them are pirated, some of them are legitimate. I'm not sure who has the legitimate edition. I really don't. Again, when anything involves mercury, you get a lot of liars and thieves involved. And it's no different in liars and thieves, and that's no different in esotericism. A friend of mine told me that he personally brokered the sale of these manuscripts to Amor. Rosicrucian Order Animal in San Jose in the 80s. No, late 80s, maybe, no, excuse me, sometime in the 90s. And later on I saw them showing up elsewhere too, and other people publishing them, without really caring who might own the rights to it. It's a small market, so it's not like there's a lot of money involved, but that's also the point. It's there's a certain dishonesty in what was going on too. So I don't know who owns them anymore, so I can't tell you. But I do know they're out there, and we owe a debt of gratitude to Hans that we can never really repay. So we hope that on his next life he is only pushed further on his journey because of what he's done in this one. That said, and I'm sure I'm not giving you too good of a view of alchemists early in the game, but you got to beware. You got to beware. Okay, the plant work of making tinctures, that makes a spagyric or alchemical tincture, as we call it. And some people, from one off the shelf, is that a spagyric one has the salts put back in. That's why we purify it. We purify the salt. We add the body back to the soul and the mind, or the energy in the mind. And that's what we mean when we refer to as the sulfur, salt, and mercury. Write this down and we'll go over it later. Yeah. And of course you all know this, right? Right? You're all familiar with this. Okay. This is the body. This is the life energy or force. And this is what we call the unique consciousness. Okay? Now in the plant, this is very simple. This is the body of the plant. This is mercury, literally alcohol, or alcohol I mean. And this is what? The essential oils, the fats, the things that make it unique. That's the sulfur. So when you get an essential oil, you're getting the sulfur. When you're getting a tincture with alcohol, what are you getting? You're getting these. So now what we do is we add this back in. Sometimes when you see a...
Which again is the salt, correct?
Yeah, what you see, sometimes when you see a tincture, you see little stuff floating in it. That's like the salt. Now I have some stuff out there we'll show you where the salt has precipitated out of the tincture and it sits at the bottom of the bottle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pour it out, we're going to filter it, we're going to take that stuff and we're going to calcine it. What's really sweet is that's not the actual body of the plant. The actual body of the plant has already been taken care of. This was additional fine stuff that was existing in the tincture. The beauty of that is it's additional fine stuff. It's not gross, meaning it's not heavy. It's easier to calcine and easier to manipulate. The flip side of that is too, it's easier to lose. Because as some of you experienced when you calcine something, you put a match to it. A lot of times, especially like a fresh tincture, like if you take lemon balm, throw it in alcohol, take that alcohol and pour it off, and then you take that tincture, that fresh plant, while it's still soaked in alcohol, it explodes. Okay, I mean it really just really pops. So you have to have it in a large enough container where it's not going to blow, little stuff out. And often the finest ash, of course, is what? The lightest, so it goes up. So you've got to make sure you have a lid that you could hold down, or some people will take a very fine galvanized metal screen, okay? They'll clean it really good, and they'll have that, and they'll hold that over it so that it doesn't fly through the screen. So it's kind of like the fine cigarette ash, But remember, it's getting pushed up by the heat currents. So you want to catch that stuff. You don't want to lose it. Well, we can have some of that because it's already sitting in the tincture waiting to be, waiting to be ignited. But we're not going to get much either now. Because what happens when you burn something, right? Mm. What is smoke? Smoke is basically the water that's going off. And we're what? Yeah, so there's not a whole lot of us left to grind up after after we get cremated. So same thing with this stuff. You often could need a lot more herb. I've known people who go out and they'll take more dry herb and they'll just burn the herb right there to get more body if they don't have enough salt. I've known people who go out and they'll buy pure essential oil if they don't have enough sulfur. Okay? So I'm telling you this because there's ways to augment your work. Now the quality is very different. I mean, if you can get a really pure essential oil, and if you get really fine salts and you've worked at it, you know, you can get a really nice stone. There was a fellow in Montreal who has an alchemy forum, Alchemistica. It's a forum you petition to join. Steve Kallick, and he just makes this wonderful rosemary tincture. You know, it is wonderful stuff. You know, rosemary is just great for what? Everything has to do with, you know, breathing, circulation, and the brain. You know, because it really opens as a strong, you know, effect. It really opens all the circulatory capacity of the body. And it's just great because this stuff is like you take a drop, wow, that's great, Steve. You know, and he's such a great guy. You know, all that solar element he brings right to it because he's such a warm, you know, and compassionate person. He brings all of that to it. You know, that's all imbued in it. It's part of the process. You know, it's like mom's cooking made with love. You know, it's the same thing here. And I said, well, Steve, how much essential oil did you have to add to this? You know, and he would say, you know, I mean, sometimes it's a lot more than you would expect. So this work, you know, it can be a little demanding on your time, and sometimes, you know, you more on the resources than you would expect. I mean, not painful, you know, it's not huge, but it's like, ah, geez, you know, I got to get more of this and more of that. But you're not thinking about the money. You think, you know, the 20 or 30 or 40 extra. You're thinking about what? The benefit you get from the work. You know, it's just part of what goes. You know. So you see alchemists will get around and they'll talk about stuff, and you never hear them complain much about the price. They'll often say, hey, you know, I got something really great on LabX, or what I got on, you know, eBay. But you never really hear them talk about anything else. You know, sometimes with antimony they'll complain because that can run a few $100 for a few pounds, and that's all very recent. But they just do it because they know they don't need much, you know. And sometimes they'll, you know, buy it in bulk and they'll share with one another. They'll pitch in. You find way. Remember, that's why you have to have friends. It's always easier in a group. When you pool your resources, you know, it's easier for you guys to say, you know what, we're going to get, you know, 2 kilos of antimony, and it's going to cost us X amount, but we only need maybe, you know, half a kilo each. Okay, so you can. My point is that's why the advantage of the group is to help and support one another, and it's not always just, you know, the easy support of the hand around the shoulder and the pat on the back and you go to a tiger, everything's all right. It's the real support of stepping up and saying, how can we solve this problem and it benefits, you know, some of us or all of us, you know, who's ever working that journey.
I'm thankful to at least the class groups that we're in, and we do that.
Yeah.
We've done that as a group.
Yeah. And I just want to reinforce that that's, you know, a very healthy and beneficial thing to do. Because I'm not going to discuss the Kali Yuga, at least hopefully not much today. But, you know, one of the problems is that we have in contemporary spiritual groups that will pass themselves off. So there really isn't a lot of support there. You know, there really isn't. And I think you all know this. So we're not gonna you know, kick that dead horse. But, you know, it's just so. But when you have it, sometimes it's good to appreciate it and continue that moving forward. Okay.
Where do you get your alcohol?
What?
You make your own alcohol?
You know, I do both. I'll get MD 2020, distill it off, because it's 20% volume alcohol. Look, you're going through all the work there. You want the most alcohol you can get. I'm trying to buy some local, you know, Dago Red. You know, but you know, sometimes you know the old guys make good stuff, and you don't want to distill it all. But you know, get some of the locals. Get some of the local. Okay, I know that's inevitably going to happen with me. It's a matter of just when. And I won't be, you know, making wine per se for drinking, because at that point, then I don't get sidetracked, you know. So I'm going to have to make it just, you know, whatever, you know.
I have a grape tree that's got a lot of bunches coming out.
Yeah.
I don't know how to go from there to there.
Are they red?
They're Concord.
Yeah. So you use red wine for this, okay? And you use red because red is, of course, the symbol of the sun and also the blood. That's why it's part of the, you see that as part of the holy feasts. Even into India and Tibet, they use a lot of red wine for the feasts. in the tantric feasts, not in the, or in the higher tantric feasts, the lower ones. There they don't use any alcohol or what are considered impure things. We see the rite of the bread and the wine going back to Melchizedek, the righteous king, in Jewish scriptures. I don't have to say the Old Testament. So in Jewish scriptures, and then moving forward through that, but it's not limited. It's a kind of rite that you see across many places and times through Central Asia and North Africa, and then of course in Europe as well. And it's part of because it represents giving, sacrifice and giving, but also communion and coming together, okay, as forming a community to the path of enlightenment. And with that is life. And those products which are used are the symbols and the essence of life themselves. Bread is life, salt is for purification, and the wine, of course, is, you know, one of the gifts of rejoicing after a day's labor, or the gifts of the gods. And in the early times, in the Greek rites, kind of a holy drunkenness was encouraged, where, you know, the rites of Bacchus. Now, those rites of inebriation, of course, it said be careful there. You don't want to have too much fun. But one of the problems with alcohol is that it drives, and I think the Chinese say the same thing, it drives the energy deeper. And it does in spagyrics and in our work too. That's why when you drink, you should only drink when you're already in a good mood, not to get into one.
Right.
And you should not drink to excess, nor should you ever drink when you're in a foul or miserable mood. Okay?
That drives you deeper, yeah.
It makes it worse, yes.
Yeah.
Oddly, we see a lot of, and in those, and I'll just point this out to you, one of these things about alchemy is that you see certain alchemists drank very heavily. Paracelsus was one of them. He was a wretchedly foul fellow at times, but at the same time, it kind of represented the climate that he lived in. I mean, he was just too brilliant for most of the people around him. They still wanted to do, you know, they didn't even understand that the blood circulated. When he cured elephantitis, they ran him out of town. You know, I mean, it was that the kind of environment he lived in. But people who knew him, people who could stand being next to him long enough, which were few, would say, you know, he was one of the most generous people. You know, he'd give his coat. He said he regularly would give his coats to beggars. You know, he would be drunk all night, and then suddenly wake up his assistant, and his assistant would have to start writing down what he said was the most profound and in some ways disturbing insights that he'd ever heard. You know, and that was Paracelsus. You know, we don't understand men and women like him. We don't. And we really can't in some ways. And it's best not to try. You don't try to understand them. You look at them for the sum of their works. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if you look at what you think is their personality, you will be wrong and you will miss what is right in front of you.
The teacher.
Yes. And this is not to say that, you know, the teacher is not the embodiment of the teachings, okay? Or that you can let someone do the most wretched behavior and then sit in front of you and be a hypocrite. What I'm saying is there are some people, and you may in your life meet one or two of them.
Right.
Yeah. Who do the most the most things you simply don't understand. I think who is the one of the great embodiments of this was the Tibetan teacher. His name escapes me at the moment. He was one of the first teachers to come to the West.
Chogyam
Trungpa. Yes, he was probably the embodiment of this. He had an automobile accident which radically changed his personality. Yet at the same time, you know, people who knew him would say he would do the strangest things. And yet then at the final moment, they might get a clue as to why. But, you know, it was not some, you know, perverse hypocrisy. Because you can't understand their level of reasoning. They have a knowledge of cause and effect that you don't. They have a wisdom that allows them to perceive, like the chessboard, 3, 4, 5 moves down the line when you're just trying to figure out whether you should move a pawn or not. Okay? Now those are rare folks, and you hopefully may meet them, or at least one of them. But for the most part, you know, you get guys like me. So my point is, when you read the literature and you read the biographies of these people, you will come across a lot of things like this. And Paracelsus was brilliant. He said there are at least 6 or 7 ways to make the philosopher's stone. You know? And he gives many, many ways of working with alchemical, you know, with plants. The thing is, when you read the stuff that he's talking about, most of the work is not really alchemical as it is preparatory to alchemical, because you're preparing things that we can buy readily. Okay. So when I do work, I'll distill my own alcohol off red wine, but I keep that aside for my own stuff or for something special, because that takes a lot of work. What I'll often use is just, you know, grain alcohol. Okay? At least in the beginning. Now in the beginning, start using grain alcohol so you can get working. There's some alchemists, and Albertus is one of them. We liked it too. We don't talk about it too much because, again, you know, you want to give people one thing and move them in a direction. You don't want to give them options. But you know, brandy was considered an exceptional thing too. I ended up getting some to work with, but I drank half of it. Hey, it was wintertime, you know, 40% alcohol. I know what they call it, fire water, you know.
You distill out the brandy
Some will distill it out, some will use it as is.
and just as a basic tip.
Yeah. But, you know, for your sake, you want to think only of 2 things, grain alcohol and distilling red wine. Okay?
And the more alcohol, the better?
Yeah, because you're distilling it. I mean, remember, if I pick up a bottle of good wine and it's 7.5% alcohol by volume, that means, you know, if I have, you know, this much, I'm only going to get, you know, this much alcohol. That's a lot of work. So if I get some good hooch like MD 2020 that says, you know, 20% alcohol by volume, that means 1/5 of it's going to come over into my flask.
Well, in Quebec, we can buy alcohol, which is 93%.
Yeah, 90 proof. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Is it clear? I mean, is it grain? It's like grain alcohol? Yeah. Occasionally you can come across, very occasionally, like 195, and sometimes I even saw it, I think it was in, of course it was near Washington, D.C., 200 proof.
Wow.
You can. I have a site of a group in Washington that I work with that will distill off pure alcohol alchemically from grapes. It's expensive, but it's well worth it.
That means
I buy it in
The one in Washington
the one in
State.
Washington State,
Yeah, I bought some.
and they'll send it to you. It's in like a 4.5 gallon. It's got to be under 5 gallons. A 4.5 gallon container. They'll send smaller ones too. They do it by quart, by gallon.
It's not worth it though.
Can you send that site out to us?
I will send it out to you. It's called Alchemical Solutions. They're wonderful.
the thing is that alchemical means that they've distilled it 7 times for
That's
purity.
right.
So if you are lucky and have access to homemade wine of a variety, you would only use something that was 100% made of grape,
Red grape.
only red grape.
That is correct. And if possible, you know, the least additional stuff, the better. Now, there is a way to ferment, to self-ferment a spagyric product. There's a way to do that, where you take the plant and you put it in water, and it creates its own alcohol. There's a way to do that. We're not going to talk about that. I have the information. I'll send it on to you if you want. Okay. My point is, the simple way is you take red grapes, red wine, you distill off the alcohol, you purify it by doing 7 times. These are known as the eagles. This is the flight of the eagle. Okay. Again, just keep circulating it, just going through.
Going through 7 times.
Yeah, 7 times. Right. You'll know when it's done. Trust me. Then you will take that, and you will take your plant, ground up very finely if it's powder, preferably if it's fresh. I try to avoid any metallic contact with my plants. I like to use ceramic, glass, or even sharp plastic.
Wood?
Yeah, but you don't get an edge when you have to cut something. Okay. I understand the Chinese are the same way.
Yeah.
No metal.
No matter.
Because the idea is that metal is what? It draws. So you don't want to draw off the energy. This is just something I did always. I came across that later. It just, but you grind it to a fine powder. By the time it's dry, though, you can also throw it in a coffee grinder at that point.
That's metal.
By that point, it's dry. It's when it's fresh that matters the most.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I found. I found when by the time you've dried it, it's not that big of a deal. But for myself personally, when it's fresh, that's when it seems to matter. Because it's still alive. It's still very, very much alive.
And the fresh, if you can use fresh herbs, it's
Better.
better.
Yeah. So what I'll mean, you want to make a tincture of lemon balm, and we'll say for your sake, lemon balm is under the domain of Jupiter. You'll go out, it's Thursday morning, a little before sunrise. You'll cut your plant, you'll grind it up. At sunrise, you put it in your mason jar, and you pour the alcohol in just like it's shown on the book. Hey, we'll draw a little jar for you, right? All right, you put about, put your plant in. Plant is salt. Here. And then you fill it up with about halfway with some alcohol. Put a little saran wrap on the top. Right? Slap your lid back down. Screw it down tight. Wrap it in aluminum foil so no light gets to it. And stick it behind your refrigerator for 2 weeks.
Behind or in?
Behind. You want
So
heat.
it's hot, right?
Yeah.
Warm back here.
Yeah, but about the temperature. Remember, we deal with natural temperature, so it's about the temperature of a hen hatching its egg.
It's about 80 degrees.
It's yogurt temperature.
It's a
Yogurt.
Usually heating pad,
Or
right?
raised bread, right?
Yeah, I use a. If you
Seeds.
go to any
Somewhere I
pet
could-
store,
Dough.
and they try to get rid of these, so they're not going to charge you for them most likely unless you keep showing up every week. Then they're going to say, "Okay, I'm going to get out of the market here. I'm going to start charging you for these things." They have to get rid of them, so they'll give them to you. Any pet store that sells fish, they get fish in big square styrofoam boxes.
Yeah.
And I get one of those. I have several of them. And I go to the Lowe's or whatever, and I get a seed starting mat they have one with the thermostat on them. And the thermostat goes inside, you just make a little crease on the top, and I put the mat inside, take the electrical cord out, pour sand in the box over the mat, so it's like the sand bath, so it spreads the heat more evenly. Set the temperature to 80 degrees, plug it in, put my stuff inside, and seal the top, and you're good to go. And you can just let it be in there, and it just keeps circulating. That's what you want. You want it just to keep circulating at a very slow rate.
You open it up.
I open it up to shake the bottles. I have them wrapped in aluminum foil, and I just shake them once
So
a
that
day
they
or
don't
something.
share.
Well, yeah, so they don't share, and so if I'm doing a bunch of different things at once,
Right.
it's not usually the case. Usually I
Okay.
separate them out.
Okay.
But if it's all Jupiter stuff or it's all different types of solar stuff, then I'll mix them in the same container. But I still wrap them in aluminum foil.
Right, and you
to
still
keep
have
it-
residuals on the
Do
bottom.
you like aluminum
I
foil?
do all that
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
Yeah.
Well, you put the saran wrap because the alcohol is going to degrade the top.
Right.
So you put that on there so it doesn't, and you seal it down tight. Now you can put a light bulb in there, like a 10 watt. I think it'll push the temperature to about 110.
Mm-hmm.
Like a hen hatching its eggs. So it's no big deal. Any in that range, that sand bath is a great idea. That's just a great idea because the difference in temperature is we think of it as a lot, but for what you're doing, it's not going to really mean any difference on your time. And it's a nice, smooth, easy way. I'm going to go get some of that. That's a nice, smooth, easy way of doing it because usually what we do to make a sand bath is got to get an electrical cord, got to strip the ends, you got to make it yourself. Forget that. If you get one of these already made, remember safety first in all of this. I mean that for real. Safety first. Take your time. Patience.
We like lemon balm a lot.
Lemon balm is one we start with because it's Jupiter and has a generous health benefits,
Yeah.
generous expansive benefits.
And it'll grow like nobody.
Yeah, we'll give him a little. Now, let me just say one thing, and then we'll go for break. So that is your that is your tincture. Then you filter it out. If you have good high-grade chemical filters, fine. If not, use your coffee filter. Some people I know have filtered with gauze and cotton, high-grade cotton, because they lose less tincture. Okay? At least they tell me, they lose a lot initially, but then of course you can squeeze the cotton. I can't squeeze my coffee, filter when it's done. Keep everything clean. Put that in a nice, clean, fresh jar, and then we take the salt outside. We ignite it while it's still hot. You're still, soaked, and we stir it, and we start the long, slow process of turning that to ash. And it is a long, slow one. And so you're starting to really work with the fire there. What I like to do is make enough tincture initially, because you will consume a lot of it in making the stone, a lot more than you think. I like to make enough where I can take some off and take it during the process. Now, you can take a tincture straight out of the bottle right there, but ideally, you will now take this tincture and, of course, distill it 7 times.